Welcome back, my rogues. Today's question is, what is a Mandela effect that you have personally experienced? Hope you enjoy, and check me out on Instagram. My grandfather was a painter, and I always remembered a big painting of a desert canyon hanging in the kitchen. Last time I remember seeing it was when I was 5, around 2008. Last time I was in his old home with my grandmother, I asked about that painting and she looked pale AF. Turns out that painting had been sold like 10-15 years before I was born. She said to me I described it perfectly and we were both creeped out. Does this count? I have a strange false memory from my childhood. As a kid, I was convinced that at some point in my past, I had encountered a dinosaur that chased me down the hallways of my house. My theory is that I accidentally caught a bit of Jurassic Park on the television. The scene in the kitchen with the velociraptors and reality got mixed up in my 4-year-old mind. This is going to sound extremely weird and I just can't explain it. It's something that's bothered me for years whenever I think about it, because it doesn't make any sense. When I was 10 years old, my parents and I moved into our new house. It was nighttime and they let me go explore the backyard. There was a crystal clear pool right near the back door, but this is where it gets strange. I walked a little further down the backyard to where there was this swing connected to this massive tree. It was there that I notified we had a second pool right down the back of the yard. But this pool was rancid green. I still remember picking up a stick and putting it in the water to see how deep it was. I still remember the sound of frogs croaking and crickets. I still remember swatting away bugs. I still remember throwing the stick into the pool and my mom calling me back in. The next morning I woke up and my dad wanted to take me swimming in this crystal blue pool. We had nice time, and then I asked my dad, "What are we going to do about the rancid pool down the back of the yard?" He looked at me completely confused, and asked me what pool. I told there was a pool down the back of the yard. He told me to stop being silly. The backyard was massive. I took him to where the swing was, and the pool was gone. It was just flat dirt. To this day I can't explain it. I swear to God, but Pikachu's tail had a black strip at the end. I know I'm not alone in this, but it is weird AF. Berenstain Bears. I remember vividly the day Princess Diana died. I was working in a grocery store and all the Sunday papers had huge headlines about it. I'll never forget being there on a quiet Sunday morning without many customers reading about it, but that was in 1996. The only time in my life I've worked in a grocery store. But now the internet tells me she died in 1997. I remember some movies as being in black and white, and even if I watch them 5 minutes after, the memories are back to black and white. For example, Rosemary's Baby, The Graduate. I don't know why. The squiggle on the Ford F that was never there. Sinbad 100 played a genie in a show called Shazam. There was this video I saw on Reddit of a guy getting choked out on the floor of a restaurant in Florida like a little bitch after cowardly headbutting a member of the staff, but it simply doesn't exist. Did it ever exist? I guess not, but it sure seemed real. I apparently materialized an entire day. I think I've mentioned it on Reddit before, but for my friend's 9th birthday I distinctly remember going to see Bewitched in the cinema with her and 2 others. And then we got a Burger King and each bought a new book from Smith's and had a sleepover. I brought up the memory a few years later and each of them swore straight up that we never ended up going that weekend because the birthday girl was sick. I've no idea when else I could have seen the movie, but I vividly remember the movie and can even tell you what I ate for lunch and what book I got. But apparently it never happened. Edit grammar. My stepmother and father keep telling me things that I've done when I was a kid. And by kid, I mean 11 years old and up. They'll tell a story about how I once accidentally dropped a full bag of flour all over the kitchen floor, or how I once threw a tantrum in the grocery store. Things like that. How I was naughty. I have never done such things ever. I would remember because they would have absolutely beaten my ass. I'm pretty fucking sure I would be old enough to remember that kind of beating. But they tell these stories with such confidence and go into all this detail. I'm just dumbfounded. It doesn't even make sense because I was a timid and well-behaved child. I distinctly remember mourning the passing of Mel Brooks. It was not long after the release of World War Z because I remember saying at least he got to see his son following his footsteps. Turns out he is still alive and kicking. I vividly remember reading an article about how Steve Jobs was hit and killed by a taxi. Weird. That fucking Pikachu thing, I swear it had a black stripe on its tail. It inspired me to stop being a racist. His story helped me change my life. It's unbelievable what HE's been through and what he accomplished in life through tremendously painful times. Jiffy peanut butter. When I was younger I was on a plane with my family. My first plane ride ever, so I knew I did have a good memory of it as it was exciting. It was very stormy day, it had been raining all day, and when we got to the airport lightning began to strike. We boarded the plane with no problems. The plane began to taxi to the runway where it would hold. Short of the runway, the airport was super busy, and due to the ATO was running slower than usual, so it took a long time until we got to the runway. While we were waiting for takeoff, the pilot came on the intercom saying that there was a warning light they didn't know how to fix, but to not be worried. After another half hour they came on the intercoms again and said the light is gone and that we are ready for takeoff. The flight went smoothly and so did the landing. A few years later I brought it up and my parents and siblings said that it never happened. They had no recollection whatsoever. Really strange. I remember so many details, even the kind of candy I had brought as a snack, as well as the airliners of not only the plane I was on but also 2 other planes I saw through the storm. I heard Call Me Maybe in 2012 and thought, why is this old song popular again? Turns out it was released in 2012. I'm still fairly sure that Jiffy peanut butter was a thing. I distinctly remember when I was a kid in the 80s, this one time my mum and aunt were discussing movies and talking about a foreign-born actress named Gal Gadot playing Wonder Woman. I always remembered the name because it sounded so exotic to my young self. Fast forward to current times and cue my bafflement. She wasn't even born until 1985. A few years back I would have sworn that the X and Y buttons on the Xbox controller were switched around. The Sinbad Janine movie I remember seeing with my father and older sister. When I learned of the Mandela effect, I called my father, asked him if remembered the movie and taking us. He said yes, and he even knew which theater in the city he took us to. The Drake Josh theme song, it's gonna take some time to realize it's gonna take some time to realign. I still can't get over the dance scene in Risky Business. I vividly remember Tom Cruise wearing sunglasses and a white button-down shirt. I think most people do. If you Google Risky Business Halloween costume, that's what everyone is wearing. Same with parodies of the scene in other movies, TV shows. How is it possible that he's actually wearing a pink striped shirt and no sunglasses? The absence of the sunglasses is what really blows my mind. Where did we all get that from? Chick-fil-A, I distinctly remember wondering why they spelled it Chick-fil-A. The other day I saw an actor on TV that I had a clear memory of him dying in a car accident. I could swear there was news about it, but no, he is alive and well. This came up super recently. My grandma has glass bowls that one put away from the dishwasher. I count them and they always count 6. I always put 2 stacks of 3 in the cupboard. Then I was putting them away and there was a 7th one. Might not sound interesting, but it was weird for me. My wife and I share one, even if it is a bit silly. There's an episode of Bob's Burgers where they replace the regular drawing form with fan art-based animation. It's a great episode, but we both are convinced that we have seen that exact episode before, but drawn in the normal style. But it seems everyone else has no idea what we're talking about, and we can't find that iteration of the episode anywhere. Buried, but here goes. I vividly remember a news report on Fox 8 News. I can't recall the headline, but first they showed a clip of pigeons on an electric line overlooking a dead-end alleyway. And the next clip was a man who was hiding in a trash can. They knocked on the can, and the man is dressed with slick-back black hair, black business suit, black tie, the white undershirt. He pops the upper half of his body out of the trash can like Oscar the Grouch and tells the news reporter that he's a time traveler and to watch for asteroids and meteors, because they will soon destroy Earth. Anyone else remember this? I swear up and down that this was on the news. I am positive that Pikachu had a black band on his tail. That isn't something we just imagine. Apparently the Mona Lisa has a veil. I don't remember seeing a veil or hearing about it ever, and just recently when I see images, I see the veil there on her head drooping down her forehead. X200B. Part of me thinks this is just that image resolution has gotten better since I was a kid, but it struck me as very weird. I definitely had the Berenstein Bernstein Bears thing. In fact, I remember there were a few animated episodes on VHS to go along with the books, and my inner 5-year-old will still swear up and down the theme song said Berenstein. I do have a weirder, more specific one. I grew up in the Southwest Mountains. Everywhere, even in the flattest valley, you can still see mountains in the distance. When I was 8 or 9, we flew out to Illinois for my great-grandfather's funeral. We landed in Chicago and still had to drive a couple hours to a podunk little town. So a good chunk of the trip was traveling through endless stretches of flat farmland. I had never been anywhere where I couldn't see mountains in some direction before, so seeing all of the land as broad and flat as the ocean was incredibly unnerving to me. A month or two later, after coming home, I remembered that drive, but in my mental image there were now mountains on the horizon. I know I made them up, because I remember being so creeped out by the flatness. But to this day my memories of Illinois have mountains. I guess it just makes me more comfortable. Tinkerbell in the Disney intro sequence. All of my friends from my hometown remember going to this big indoor play place when we were little kids. We could all describe it with significant detail. It closed down at some point during childhood, and we can't find any information about it online, nor do our parents remember taking us there. As a kid I was really fascinated with space science. I specifically remember watching a documentary about the Milky Way, and they showed the position of our solar system if you were to look at the Milky Way from above. It was a tiny dot on the edge of one of the galaxy's spiral arms. However, I recently found out that we're actually located much closer to the middle of the spiral. I thought I was going crazy, but apparently other people have told me they have this same memory as well. Strange. Before I was born, my uncle had a really terrible accident and suffered total memory loss. When I was younger I distinctly remember my parents telling me it was a motorcycle accident and going into detail about how different my aunt and uncle had been, and showing me an old photo of them with the bike. I asked them about it when I was older and they said he never rode a motorcycle and it was a skiing accident. I still have the false memory in my head and have to remember which one's real. It's actually Looney Tunes, not Looney Tunes. I vividly remember the Mowgli movie on Netflix before it even came out. When it did I could tell my parents exactly WGAT was going to happen. Also the song Dark Side, I could have sworn I heard my sister sing listen to it years before it came out.
Hope you liked this video. Stay frosty my rebels.